Hello everyone, my name is Ferris German. I'm an Associate Dean and covered the states of Kentucky, South Carolina, Tennessee, and West Virginia. I'm also a proud Emory alumna. I graduated in 2011 and have been with the admission office ever since. These are a few of many reasons that I'm very excited to be speaking with you today about Emory. My hope is that our time together will show you that when you're a student at Emory, you are a part of something greater than yourself, even your education. You become a member of an institution that has a storied legacy of making the right decision even when it's hard, of taking risks for the good of humanity, and of being a place where students and faculty work together creatively to address the problems of the 21st century. Now, as a born and raised Atlantan who's lived in the South my entire life, when I think of Southern culture today, I think of storytellers. I think of storytellers like President Jimmy Carter and Alice Walker, and Emory's own director of creative writing, Jericho Brown, the 2020 recipient of the Pulitzer Prize in Poetry. These storytellers, all of whom are members of Emory's community in different ways, and so many others, have woven the narrative around living in the South today and remind us that telling stories is important. 6 years ago, the world watched as 4 patients with the Ebola virus were brought to Emory University Hospital. In a time where little was known about how to care for these patients, Emory's Serious Communicable Disease Unit, born of a collaboration with the CDC, was able to successfully treat these patients and create new protocol that is now standard for dealing with deadly infections. So the end result was well worth the risk, but this was a very scary decision for the Emory community to make. For months, one of the deadliest infections in the world was living and breathing inside of human beings at the heart of our campus. And there was no forgetting about it because it wasn't just national news, it was international news, and the media were everywhere asking us how we felt about it. And I think the Emory community's attitude was really well summarized by one of the nurses on the treatment team who said, "We can fear or we can care." And that has remained Emory's mantra in its important healthcare work to this day in its efforts around COVID-19. Right now, Emory faculty and scientists are working nonstop to better understand this virus, how best to treat those suffering from it, as well as how to ultimately vaccinate against it entirely. As both a globally recognized research university and healthcare institution, we are honored to support the fight against COVID-19, and especially to support the healthcare professionals who are serving on the front lines. And while this important work is at the forefront of our minds right now, and with good reason, I think it's important to remember that public health is actually one of many fronts on which the Emory community has been combating major world issues for a long time now. Another such front is the global ecosystem research and preservation effort. This photo is actually from a field study trip that's led by one of our environmental science professors, Dr. Barry Brosi. He's a leading research expert in the ecosystem impacts of pollinator decline. So his work is crucial in our understanding of bees and their important impact on food production, as well as ecosystems and their concerning decline in recent decades. Dr. Brosi's work is also one of many environmental sustainability issues and initiatives that are taking place here, including things like innovations in green building and curriculum development, sustainable food procurement, and energy and water conservation that are collectively making Emory a global leader in this arena. It's important to know that environmental science is actually one of many academic contexts in which Emory and its students seek to be change agents. Another such context is Emory's Goizueta Business School, which supports a popular undergraduate degree pathway and established social enterprise at Goizueta. This is an action-oriented research center that is committed to generating positive societal impact by creating better markets, supporting stronger communities, and developing next-generation social innovators. Already, the center has launched over 250 programs across the world and accelerated over 200 local small businesses. And while Emory is very fortunate to be home to so many students dedicated to enacting positive change in the world, our professors play a tremendous role in their ability to do so. Take, for example, Dr. Barry Brosi, the environmental science professor I mentioned earlier. He recently addressed a group of high school counselors visiting Emory and was asked why he's chosen to stay at Emory. In his response, he reflected on how he sees teaching and research not as separate buckets, but as an integrative whole, and believes this to be a strong contributing factor to the fact that every year there are undergraduate co-authors on publications in his lab, and that students from his lab have won honors and awards and distinctions such as the Luce Fellowship and Fulbright scholarships. He also reflected on the fact that alumni from his lab are changing the world, and that is what he's most proud of in his work. And when we hear stories about this in higher education, of a professor who is having such an impact in their field, as well as on the education and lives of their undergraduate students, so that in turn those students may have an impact in the world, I recognize that it's easy to wonder about authentic access to this caliber of professor. So while Dr. Brossi's contribution to the field of environmental science is standout, his attitude towards undergraduate engagement at Emory is actually part of a general consensus. Our professors truly believe that contributing fully to their respective fields of academia does not stop with cutting-edge research, but requires a passionate investment in the next generation of minds that will carry that field forward. And that investment starts with first-year undergraduates. Now, it should be noted that the Emory community's passion around current-day engagement and world change is actually really nicely complemented by its dedication to the importance of history and conservation. So it should come as no surprise that Emory is home to the largest museum of any university in the region. Carlos Museum has actually played host to some of the most famous exhibits in the world, such as the Dead Sea Scrolls collection and the Tutankhamun exhibit. Now, some of these visits, as well as the international notoriety of Carlos Museum, can in part be traced back to a series of unexpected events that took place about 20 years ago. In 1999, the Niagara Falls Museum closed its doors and sold off all of its antiquities. Subsequently, Carlos Museum purchased its Egyptian collection, including 10 mummies. Upon the collection's arrival to Emory, a cohort of professionals and volunteers came together to engage in restorative efforts and also in hopes of better understanding the lives these mummies led. So for the first time, mummies were taken to Emory University Hospital for x-rays and CT scans in hopes of discerning things like age and disease and illness and potential cause of death. And it was throughout this exploration process that it was discovered one of these mummies was actually Pharaoh Ramses I, who'd been missing from Egypt for quite some time. Upon discovering this, Emory and Carlos Museum leadership immediately decided that the pharaoh should be returned to Egypt as a goodwill gesture on behalf of the people of Atlanta to the people of Egypt. And thus began this incredible, long-standing and impactful partnership between Emory and Carlos and their counterparts in Egypt in an effort to further academia, but also as a reminder to the world at large about the importance of honoring culture and heritage. Now, in all that Emory has done, and all it will continue to do, it could ask for no better collaborator in its nationally and internationally impacting work than the city of Atlanta, the crossroads of the Civil War, birthplace of the Civil Rights Movement, and home to civil discourse. To learn more about Atlanta, I'm going to pass you over to my colleague, Timothy Fields.
Thank you for that wonderful information, Farish. My name is Timothy Fields, Senior Associate Dean here in the Office of Undergraduate Admission. I directly oversee the state of Illinois, but I work very closely with many of the states in the Midwest in the application and review process. With the brief time we have today, I want to talk about Atlanta, ATL. The only city in the world that can say it has two Nobel laureates in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and former President Jimmy Carter. Also one of the few cities that is home to Olympic Summer Games as we hosted it in 1996. And yes, home to Emory University. While my colleague Ferris German has gone into a lot of depth about the academic opportunities that students will have while they're at Emory, I want to talk about how Atlanta complements that education and the many opportunities students will have beyond the classroom to help them achieve their goals, not only while they're here at Emory, but beyond. The first area I think about is the corporate opportunities, as you can see from the slide behind me. Thinking that at any point in time during the academic year, students can work at companies like Delta, Coca-Cola, UPS, Home Depot, and as you can see, the list goes on and on. But also students have the opportunity to work at international companies like Porsche, Mercedes-Benz, and other companies that students have that opportunity to really get that experience that they're looking for. Also, if we have entrepreneurs who have budding ideas, have the next great Facebook or Amazon idea, Atlanta operates as an incubator with several startup companies and a lot of seed funding to help students get those ideas off the ground. Beyond that, Atlanta is a leader in nonprofit work. So students want to work with the Boys and Girls Club, the United Way of America. Those opportunities are easily accessible to them. Beyond the business interests, one of the largest growing industries in Atlanta is the film and media industry. Atlanta has surpassed and become a leader as far as film and media production within the last couple of years. I can remember a couple years ago being at the High Museum in Midtown Atlanta, and my kids walking through and talking about how beautiful the museum was. And then a couple weeks later, they saw that same museum in Black Panther. And I can think of numerous movies and TV shows that I can see different places in Atlanta, and it's very exciting. But more so, it gives students who want to get into that industry the opportunity to be involved in many of those opportunities throughout the year. And then probably the most readily available opportunities for students is in the healthcare industry. Emory is one of the largest healthcare networks in the country, and when you come to campus, it's immediately felt. When you see the general hospital, when you know there's a pediatric hospital across the street, and then there are several clinics around the campus, in addition to the CDC being right next door. So students who want to shadow doctors, do research, work side by side with clinicians, have that opportunity available to them. But I would be remiss if I did not talk about the civic and social engagement that students can participate in as well with the city of Atlanta, with a long history of being involved with civil rights and social justice. Students who want to be involved in that type of work readily have that information available to them as well. One of our largest clubs or organizations is called Volunteer Emory, which gives students the opportunity to do community service throughout the city of Atlanta, so that if they want to get involved in the social and civic engagement, they have that opportunity. And I could go on and on about how these different internships, research opportunities, civics engagement help add to the Emory education. But I also want to highlight the city of Atlanta as far as the fun opportunities that it presents for students. Atlanta has over 35 different neighborhoods that students can explore during the time that they're here, from the downtown area, which has one of the world's largest aquariums, the World of Coca-Cola, and numerous other tourist attractions, to Buckhead, which is a large shopping district, and then finally, probably one of my favorite areas, Beaufort Highway, where students can, taste cuisines from all over the world. And there are many other neighborhoods that I would like to highlight, but we don't have enough time. You'll have to come to Atlanta and see those yourself. But when I think about everything that Atlanta has to offer, I think what the most important thing is that you can come to Emory and you can get a great education inside the classroom. But I think we all know that having a good GPA and getting a good education is not enough in today's competitive market. Students need to have those experiences, those practical experiences that help them. So if you want to be a lawyer, if you want to, go and work in, public service, have you had an opportunity to work in a law office? Have you had an opportunity to work with a local congressperson? If you want to, go and be a doctor, what is it like to be, in work with patients on a daily basis? And what is the work that goes into that? And then, of course, if you want to go into business, have you worked with a Fortune 500 company? Have you ventured out and seen what, goes on in that industry? We want to make sure students have those experiences, and Atlanta provides the perfect backdrop for that, to allow students to explore, to have fun in one of the world's greatest cities, but also to get all the tools they need necessary so they can be successful, not only with the time that they are here at Emory, but also beyond, when they go wherever they're going to go after they leave Emory. So we want students to be successful. We want to allow them the tools to be successful, and Atlanta is the perfect complement to the Emory education, and all students need to go beyond. Now, to learn more about the application process, I'm going to kick it over to my close friend, Mark Butt.
Hey folks, and welcome to Emory University. My name is Mark Butt, and I'm the Director of Undergraduate Selection here at Emory. Currently, I'm the first reader on applications from the Los Angeles metro area, as well as students who live in Europe and the Middle East. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about holistic admission and what that means. And for some students, this can seem like a pretty mysterious process, but hopefully after some time today together, you'll have a good sense about what our admission officers are looking for as we select our class of 2025. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. When students apply to Emory University, the most important document they submit is their academic transcript. The academic transcript is important to the admissions committee because we want to make sure that you're ready to handle the academic work here at Emory. So when we're looking at that document, we're looking at what courses you took and how well you did. We're looking at how challenging your courses were. We're looking for academic excellence and academic mastery. We'll notice your grades as well as your grade trends. So for example, if a student doubles up in the social sciences or doubles up in math, or they drop a foreign language, these are things that the admissions officer will notice about your academic transcript. Neither are better or worse, but we do want to understand your academic journey and why you made the choices you did. Your 4 years of high school and your academic transcript allow us to understand how consistently you've performed in academic courses across the 4 years of high school. For students applying outside the United States in global schooling systems, your application is read by an admission officer who understands the schooling system of that country. Lastly, for students who are in high school where English is not the native language of instruction, we will be looking for information about how well you've done in English language courses. For the class of 2025, Emory University is test optional. So what that means is we will look at the ACT or SAT exams if you choose to submit them, but they're not a requirement. A big question that you may have is, how do I know if I should submit testing if I have it? One of the things I recommend doing is not only looking at our averages that we publish on our website, but also having that conversation with your guidance counselor about whether or not you should submit your standardized testing. For us, again, remembering that the high school transcript is driving our decision making, the standardized testing may be something that you consider as part of your portfolio that you're submitting to the admissions committee. Students can also submit additional standardized tests if they like. These are things like the AP exams, IB exams, or maybe some SAT subject exams. I encourage students to think about ways they can demonstrate academic mastery. That can happen in the classroom with your grades and your courses. It can also happen with standardized exam results. So I encourage students to think about how they want to present themselves to the admissions committee while looking at our averages and having that conversation with their guidance counselor about what might be best for them. If you think that standardized testing is not your best reflection, then I wouldn't submit them. But if you do think they're a good way that you can demonstrate content mastery, I would recommend submitting them. That decision remains up to the student. So we look forward to reading your application with or without standardized testing this year. When students submit their application to us, they're also asked to list some activities or their extracurricular engagement. The purpose of that is the admissions committee is trying to understand what you care about. So not so much what you did, but really why you did it. So we're trying to understand your motivation, what you care about, what gets you up in the morning. And that could be different for every student. In fact, many students have multiple interests. So whether that's the arts or athletics or journalism, it could be volunteerism or leadership. We're really, again, trying to understand what your interests are and how they're manifesting themselves in your current school context. So admission officers are thinking about what you might do on campus and how you might spend your time. And the non-academic section of your application is a way that you can explain that to us. One of the tips I offer students is that if you're a part of any clubs or organizations that have acronyms like the ABC Club, make sure you spell out what those are. Some of the admission officers may not be familiar with the granular details of your school, so I highly encourage students to spell out what they're involved in so that doesn't leave guesswork for our admission officers. Emory University asked students to submit 3 letters of recommendation, 2 from teachers and 1 from a high school guidance counselor. Let's talk a little bit about the teacher recommendations first. The teacher recommendations are a good way for the admission officer and the larger committee to understand your role in the classroom. We're looking for viewpoints from experts, your teachers, on not only the quality of your work, but other things that we may not be able to glean in other parts of the application. So for example, how well you work with others or what types of questions you ask in the classroom. We value the opinions of your teachers and we want to get to know you through their lens. Secondly, the admissions committee is looking at the guidance counselor recommendation. The guidance counselor recommendation is a good way for us to gain information about context and other factors influencing your college search or context. So think about your guidance counselor recommendation as more of an aerial view, whereas the teacher recommendations are really understanding academic mastery and also your role in the classroom. These letters of recommendation are typically 1 page from each of the teachers and 1 page from the guidance counselor. When students submit their application, they'll also be submitting some writing samples. Here at Emory, we typically will see the personal statement, which is about 650 words, as well as typically 2 short answers on our member page. The personal statement is a longer narrative about you, and we're really trying to understand your journey so far and also your perspective on the world. Typically, really good personal statements are a story that allows us to understand your life experience up until submitting the application. On the supplements, these are typically shorter. They're roughly around 150 to 200 words, and these are really targeted questions. We, in those short answers, are once again looking for salient points of information in understanding how you think or experience the world. Overall, both the personal statement as well as the shorter answers are a narrative about how you've experienced the world through your life up through being a high school senior. And the personal statements are really a primary source in which admission officers can understand your journey. One of the other documents that comes with your application is called your school profile. Your school profile allows the admission officer and the larger admissions committee to understand what is typical or what's normal or what you had access to in your high school. The admissions committee is very interested in your high school context because we want to make sure we have reasonable expectations for how you spend your time and what's normal in your high school community. We want to understand typically what percentage of students go to 4-year colleges, what percentages of students are leaving their state to go to college, what's a typical journey like for a student in your local high school. All the pieces of information that I've mentioned up until now, from your high school transcript to test scores to non-academic engagement and letters of recommendation, all of this information is looked at in context of your high school. And because there's a wide variation of high schools across the United States, but also around the world, the context under which you're applying is really important that we understand. If you want to see your high school profile, feel free to get in touch with your guidance counselor or your college counseling division at your high school. Once again, the high school profile is important to us, and it's important that we understand this information because your Emory admission officers read by region. That context allows us to understand what excellence looks like in your community. Hopefully this overview of holistic review has been helpful. Hopefully you've been able to understand how we look at transcripts, letters of recommendation, extracurricular activities, and your school profile. I want to thank you especially for joining us today, Farish, Tim, myself. We hope you've learned a little bit more about Emory, and we look forward to engaging with you in the near future. Until then, stay safe, and thanks for joining us. Take care.